loyalty programs can help, but loyalty programs are not the center of the restaurant activity. What we do is incremental. So it can help you shift your sales by a couple percent here and there, but it's not going to change the trajectory of your business altogether. It is helpful, but it's not some kind of miracle. So I think if the goal is to win against the giants, that the heart of that win is in the restaurant operations and food quality. And you can't win just on loyalty and CRM marketing.
Welcome to Whisking It All with your host, Angela Esposito, co-founder of Whisk.ai, a food and beverage intelligence platform. We're going to be interviewing hospitality professionals around the world to really understand how they do what they do. Welcome to another episode of Whisking It All. We're joined today by Olga Lopategui, founder of Restaurant Loyalty Specialist. Olga, thanks for joining us.
Sure. Thanks for inviting. So it's always nice to talk about loyalty with other people that are in the restaurant space.
There you go. And if there's someone who can definitely talk on the topic or speak on the topic, I should say it's you. Quite the impressive profile. So I always like to kind of get the backstory and then dive in. So I think one thing that really stood out when I was looking at your profile is, you had quite an impressive career working with global brands like Pizza Hut, KFC, etc. So I'd love to know kind of like, maybe to kick things off, what led you to transition from maybe some of those corporate roles to founding your own company, Restaurant Loyalty Specialists?
Definitely. So it kind of happened by itself. So it was life reasons. So I actually really enjoyed my time with Yum Brands as well as with TGI Friday. So corporate, international, lots of travel. I was mostly in international marketing roles. Yeah. And all of that was wonderful until I had a couple kids. And then that unreasonable amount of international travel was starting to catch up with me, and especially my husband. So we decided to kind of shift gears a little bit. He took a job in Austin, Texas. We made the move, and I left my corporate career behind for at least while the kids were little. Right. And while I was at home, before the pandemic started, actually, I wanted to do something fun that is still in the restaurant space. And I decided, well, I'll do a little bit of consulting. 6 years down the road, we have an actual company that works with dozens of clients. So it's been very, awesome. Very fun. Now I'm not going back to corporate ever again. I just love being independent and running my own little show.
That's awesome. And then for our listeners that don't know, can you just tell them a bit, and we're going to dive deeper, but can you tell them a bit about the idea behind Restaurant Loyalty Specialists? Why was the company founded? What do you guys do?
Yeah, so we are a consulting company. So we don't do any software. We just work with restaurant chains on making the best use of their loyalty and CRM software. So we're platform agnostic. So if you do happen to have a loyalty program that is on any of the popular platforms, we generally know all of the popular platforms within the restaurant space. A lot of our clients are on Punch, a lot of our clients are on Paytronic, some on Thanks. So the usual suspects. So what we do is we work with restaurant chains to make the most out of their existing platforms. It comes in as strategic support. For some, it comes in as execution, just deploying campaigns and measuring results on their behalf. And then there's everything in between. But that's what we do. It's very custom engagements. It's meeting brands where they are, helping them with whatever resources they have gaps on, and being very, very practical.
You deal obviously with many different brands and chains. What's a common thread you see? Like, so when they come to you, is it typically just generally that their loyalty is not working? And is there a typical theme you see on why that's happening?
So the typical client comes to us about 3 years into their loyalty journey.
Okay.
So they get the loyalty program running, or maybe they've shifted from one platform to another. They're 2-3 years in. It's been going on for a while, and they're wondering, is it actually working?
Okay.
So that's the most common scenario. Usually when people just launch it, everything is fine. How hard can it be? Let's just do it, and it's all going to work by itself. I think what's also not helping is when those tools get sold, to restaurant companies. They get sold as self-service and hands-off. It just like pretty much runs itself.
Right.
Like you just put it in, and there's nothing, absolutely nothing you have to do after that. And then
Right.
within 2 to 3 years, the realization comes in for many companies that it actually you kind of have to have a driver, and the driver kind of has to pay attention. And if your driver is paying attention to 10 other things in marketing at the same time, this is probably going to get abandoned.
That
So we
makes
come in
sense.
and help figure out the ROI and basically help drive it or reduce the amount of driving that's needed to the bare minimum that's usable.
That makes sense. Makes a ton of sense. And yeah, it's I'm in the software space as you imagine, and it happens a lot. There's a lot of we try not to do it at all, but there's a lot of people out there that will kind of overpromise, underdeliver, which then leads to more clients for you. So it's good. but
Yeah, it's like sometimes it's a little bit sad. Like the way that I put it, it's like it's almost kind of like the gym membership. Like it's not enough to just pay for the membership. You can
yeah,
actually have somebody has to go and work out. So
yeah,
if you
yeah,
don't do it at all, it's like just paying for it doesn't really help very much. So
yeah.
unfortunately, that's how those problems are.
Yeah, yeah, 100%. And it's funny because the world we're in, we're in very much the inventory world and all that. And it's funny enough, we use the gym analogy too, where we're like, listen, we're gonna help you, we're gonna give you the tools, but like if you don't count, you don't count. If you don't scan your invoice, we can't process it. It's like you have to do
Yep.
basic things, or we can't help you, type of thing. So totally get it. Out of curiosity, for people listening, right, they're maybe struggling with loyalty, they're maybe thinking about getting into it. Can you maybe tell us a bit more about what differentiates your consulting agency when it comes to loyalty versus maybe a general loyalty consulting business?
So we work only with restaurant chains. So
Yeah.
that's really our main differentiator.
Okay.
We know the restaurants inside out. Everybody on my team has worked with at least a handful, if not dozens, of restaurants and
Got it.
restaurant platforms. So we just know this particular vertical extremely well.
Got it.
And we think that helps. That makes things move faster. We don't. You don't
Yeah.
have to teach us what the food cost is, and what are operational concerns. Why you cannot ask certain questions in the drive-through, like philosophical questions in the drive-through, are not a good thing to do. So yeah. So that's really the main piece. But other than that, we pretty much pick ideas from retail, because retail, from the CRM perspective, retail and hospitality as in hotels and entertainment
Yeah.
venues are
Yeah.
so much more ahead of the restaurants in terms of how
That's
they
true.
run CRM. So
Yeah.
we pick up lessons from there, and we take whatever we can and we apply it to the restaurant space. We
I love
modify it,
that.
simplify it. But we're not in the business of inventing things. We borrow
Yeah.
from the giants and reapply.
Yeah. Okay, that's amazing. And is there a typical, just to get a sense, is there a typical size of chain? Like, can a chain be 10 stores, or is it like 50 stores plus? Like, what do you typically look at when you say chains?
So most of our clients are 30 units plus.
Oh,
So average
okay.
client is probably closer to a couple hundred units.
Okay.
And then we worked with some clients that are in like low thousands. We don't
Yeah.
have a lot of clients that are in like top 10.
Yeah.
But generally, what I look at for most engagements is what is the size of your active database.
Yeah.
Because where we add value is by getting people that are in your database to show up at your restaurant a little bit more.
Right.
So if you have 20,000 people in the database, I cannot justify the fees that we have to charge
Got
to
it.
make it work. If you have a couple 100,000, we can start talking. If you have 1 million, we definitely can talk.
Got it.
But if there's not a lot of people that we can impact in your system, you're probably better off just first building the database and then getting us involved.
Got it. That makes sense. And, we got a lot of restaurant listeners, restaurant operators, and part of the podcast value is really just trying to help them and give them value. So we get people from different walks of life. Sometimes it's tech companies, sometimes loyalty, marketing, you name it. And so one question that I'm sure the listeners would appreciate is really maybe some common mistakes that you see restaurants make when implementing loyalty programs.
So we'll set it and forget it is one. So
That's a big one, I imagine.
yes, and it's very, very understandable because by the time the implementation is finished, everybody is just so fatigued by this whole process of getting this thing up and
Yeah.
running that it's very, very tempting to just completely forget about it. It's okay to
That's
forget
right.
about it like for 3 or 4 months, but not for like a couple years, which some people do.
Right.
So
Okay.
set it and forget it would be number one. I think the other one is interestingly the over segmentation too early.
Okay. Tell me
So
more.
there's a lot of conversation in the industry about how you have to personalize and the marketing one-to-one marketing, which doesn't exist by the way, but people strive for it. So I've seen clients that get into the programs and they try to hyper personalize over segment their not so large database. It's very, very difficult. It requires a lot of effort, and if the segment size is not very meaningful, you do a lot of work and you get very little return because it doesn't matter which offers, promotions, messages you put out. Typical redemption rate or engagement rate is 1%, 2%.
Oh, wow.
So if your
Wow. Okay.
segments are tiny, you're putting a lot of work into getting 4 people to click the button. It's absolutely, absolutely, it's a lot of spinning, but there is no
Yes.
good reason to do that. So we
Okay.
try to
That's a good
minimize
tip.
that as much as
Okay.
possible. And then I think the other one that is pretty common is when brands are looking for the software partner for loyalty and CRM. I see very often the brands are not fully realizing which stage of development they are at and what type of software is right for them. So I have seen brands acquiring, getting sold on solutions that are too basic for their needs, and I have seen also brands completely overshooting the scale
Right.
that they're going for, and it's a big challenge because if you overshoot, it's very difficult because the cost of maintenance of the program and the cost of resources that you need to be able to run that program is
Right.
not something that works for your business. So if you're a 100 unit chain, you just cannot use the same software that McDonald's is using. It's wonderful, but you need a different type of team to make it work. And
Right.
similarly, you get a piece of software that is designed for mom and pops. It may be more affordable, but then you find out you can't really operate as an enterprise system if you have 30 restaurants and you don't want to set up promotions for each individual location manually. And that's what would happen if you get something that's targeted to mom and pops. It's not designed to operate as a single system.
Makes sense. Those are some good tips. So thank you for sharing that. I'm curious to know, like, how have loyalty programs in general evolved in the restaurant industry from your point of view?
That's a tough one. How do they evolve? So,
How have they evolved? Like, if you think about
uh,
loyalty 20 years ago to loyalty today, how have you, like, what do you see when you think restaurant loyalty, let's call it over the last 2 decades?
last 2 decades, which kind of coincides with my time in the restaurant space.
There you go.
So
Perfect.
it's close enough, unbelievably. Uh,
Yeah.
so when I was just starting out back in mid 2000s in the restaurant space, loyalty programs were only possible for large enterprise brands, and they were
Yeah.
extremely expensive and they were very hard to operate, but they gave huge competitive advantage to anyone that was actually able to do it.
Okay.
So Pizza Hut is a great example. They had a loyalty program, rewards program early on. Database marketing was phenomenal when nobody else could actually do it. So as technology changed, progressed, the loyalty programs and CRM marketing is much more accessible. Almost any chain, not even chain, even individual restaurants can do it. Is it worth it for them is
Right.
a different question, but they
Right.
can. It's affordable enough, right?
Right.
So just the democratization of this technology is quite amazing. So that's what I've been observing. So now loyalty programs, they're not quite what we call table stakes, but they're getting close to it.
Right.
Not having a program is becoming a disadvantage, particularly for mid-sized and smaller chains. So that's why we see everybody jumping on the loyalty bandwagon.
Got it.
Although I would argue it's not required. There are plenty of really strong performers in the market that do not have a formal loyalty program.
Yeah.
The database marketing is absolutely required, but the loyalty program you can get away without it if you know what you're doing.
Okay, that's interesting. And I guess today, when you think about it now, there's like digital ordering pretty much since COVID, but even before then. But it really got super popular. Everyone went to online ordering and all that, and then third party platforms. How do you think that has impacted the idea behind loyalty programs?
Well, third-party platforms are challenging animal, right? So, it's guests that are they're not first-party guests.
Yeah.
Generally, we don't get a lot of data on who they are, what they purchase. We believe, and based on some studies that I've seen, that there's very little overlap between the guests that are loyal to the brand and the guests that are ordering through third-party platforms. Although there
Okay.
are some exceptions out there. So there are people that will pay for convenience and they don't want to mess with the online ordering, 7 online ordering logins for each restaurant, and they're happy to
Right.
pay a 30% or whatever
Hmm.
premium
Right.
to Uber Eats and DoorDash. But those people, as far as we understand, are in the minority. Yeah?
Right.
I work with restaurant chains that have a high percentage of those guests. We try to do our best to convert them into first party, simply because you can control the experience better, and they get a better value, and the restaurant gets a better value as well. So there's less of a middleman in there.
Yeah.
So we try to shift them away, but we also don't fight them. Right? So you just got to meet people where they are.
Yeah. That makes sense. And like, what are some tactics, without giving away all your secrets, what are some potential tactics that like a restaurant could do to potentially get some third party customers to become first party customers?
Yeah, and by the way, we don't really have a lot of secrets, right? Everything we do is very much out in the open. You just got to do it, right? So
Okay. A lot of
there is
execution and
it's just a lot
understanding the
of
big picture.
execution. So there is
Yeah.
there is no magic in this, right? It's just
Okay.
you got to sit down and think
Mhm.
through it and do it and actually do it, and then check, have you done it? How well have you done it? There is not no like not a lot of IP, not a lot of magic. Just do stuff. In terms of getting guests to convert, one of the most effective things you can do has nothing to do with database marketing. It's promoting first party ordering and loyalty program on everything you can legally do, meaning in most cases packaging. So
Right.
typically, you're not allowed to put flyers, at least not legally allowed, contractually allowed to put flyers promoting your first-party ordering into your DoorDash,
Right.
Postmates, etc.
Which makes sense.
Packages,
Yeah.
which makes sense, but there is
Yeah.
nothing that prevents you from promoting it on your standard packaging.
Mm.
And that's why we always recommend you launch the program. You just push on making sure that all of your packaging information contains best offers are in the app. Join here to download QR codes direct you where the guest can find you. So just making it very, very visible that the guest can join the program and order directly going forward. So that's really the most effective piece. But we also highly encourage our clients to not allow third-party guests to earn points on their orders. We want to exclude them from loyalty because the discount rate is already very high. You don't want to provide an additional incentive to continue ordering through, and to provide benefits to guests that do that is just usually not cost effective.
Okay, that makes sense. Those are some good tips, and I'm curious to just pick your brain a little more. Super interesting. You briefly mentioned before when we were talking about loyalty and chains. You kind of mentioned, is it worth it for single venues? So I have to ask, from your point of view, tell me more about that. Is it worth it from what you've seen when it comes to individual venues?
So, like single mom and pop, one store
Correct.
operations, I think that it's absolutely worthwhile to have an email marketing database. So, gather
Yeah.
the emails whichever way you can. There's not too many methods, but get the emails and get the regular email marketing program
Yeah.
out there. In terms of the actual loyalty program, typically they require at least some level of management. So if you're a single store and you are on a point of sale that has a built-in loyalty tool, it's worth looking at. It's not
Yeah.
always an ideal option, but I would not, if it's a single store, I would not go to a third-party SIS platform and deal
Yeah.
with creating a loyalty program plan. I
Okay.
would stick to in built-in, probably okay, depending on how it can be configured.
Okay, that makes sense. And then, yeah, in terms of collecting emails, I know obviously one way I've seen commonly is the whole internet thing, the Wi-Fi and capture their email.
Yep.
But what are maybe some other ways that you've seen people collect emails?
So table tents work very well. Sign up here, get whatever free dessert, whatever during your current visit. So you
Got it.
validate that they've actually made a download or edit their email. So that definitely work. SMS programs also work reasonably well. So I get people to sign up for the short code. So usually you don't get as much of a scale, and if you don't send offers, you get high on subscribe rates. But
Got
it's
it.
also very effective with particularly the younger crew out there. Works even better than email. But essentially, in-store acquisition. That's the
Got
way
it.
to go when you don't have a giant budget. And actually, even if you do,
It's the way to
it's
go.
still the most cost effective. Yeah.
Yeah, got it. And one thing I like to with the guests always kind of go back and try to understand what got them into this space. So maybe just taking a few steps back, and we'll get more into loyalty, but just taking a few steps back. What originally got you interested in the restaurant space? So if we go like pre
I
Yum
got
Brands and pre
into,
that, yeah.
I've always liked food. so, so that was, and my early career had absolutely nothing to do with restaurants or loyalty or marketing. I was actually a lawyer in oil and gas. I used to work
Okay.
as an in-house counsel for ConocoPhillips and working on some like random upstream pipeline projects, God knows where. And I could never relate to the product. There were nice people I was working with. But it was a big. I always loved international. It was a big international component. We had like a big international consortium working on that project. The best part of it was going out to eat in all those countries I was visiting,
Right.
and that's what I really enjoyed. And so then when I went for my MBA, I was like, you know what, I got to switch to something that's just a little closer to food and dining out. And I think that's why I've stayed in the industry and I never left because it just,
That's pretty cool.
yeah, because I
That's
just love
awesome.
my food. And one of the funnest parts about being on Yum International Team and TGI Fridays International Team is that I got to visit a big portion of the world with them, as well as just on my own locomotion, but with them.
Right. So right.
It was probably like 40 plus countries out of the 80 that I've visited in my lifetime were thanks to work travel.
Wow.
And I ate my way through every little street market and every little corner, just learning about what the people enjoy. Food is culture, right?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. It's to the reason I love restaurants so much. I mean, there's a few reasons, but one reason, funny enough, is actually because I think that's what like makes a city special. When you go visit a city, a lot of the times the first thing is like, oh, you have to try this restaurant or this scene or this area has a few good restaurants or cafes. So it's
Mm-hmm.
like it's such a common thing, and it's like if you take a really cool city and then take out the restaurants and put maybe just chains, all of a sudden it's not a cool city anymore. So it's like it's a good metric to see like what restaurants and chefs and mixologists, etc., or hotels are in that city, and generally that's what kind of gives it a very unique vibe.
Yeah, and also like what do locals eat? What do expats eat? How
Exactly.
do cultures, regional, international? How does it all come together? So all of that's just been very very fun to observe, and I miss that a little bit in my current role where I'm mostly in my own office with
Right.
very little travel. But
Right.
it's time for everything.
Yeah, exactly. And since you've been to so many countries, I have to ask you, and you ate at so many places, are you on so many loyalty programs personally? Are you part of a ton of loyalty
I
programs?
I am so we typically work with a dozen clients at any given time.
Got it.
So that's like your minimum. I do have to admit I turn push notifications off because I just
Right.
can't.
If not,
So just
right.
like I can't, I would be able to work if I had push notifications for every restaurant. But I
Yeah.
probably have two dozen loyalty programs on my phone for like client support, testing,
Right.
loyalty
R&D.
baseline assessments, and then there's a handful that I use routinely myself. Actually, shout
Okay.
out to a client. So today, I don't have a lot of local clients.
Yeah.
Today, my sister and her kids are in town, and they asked for something local. here in Austin. I'm based in Austin, Texas. So we went to Smoky Moe's Barbecue, which
Very
we
cool.
helped them launch their loyalty program last year. So we went there, and I got
That's awesome.
my app up out, and we got some brisket and
Oof, sounds
sandwiches, and
delicious.
so that was great.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And then in terms of like what you've seen when you work with people, I know you mentioned a couple of different loyalty platforms like Punch, Patronics. I know there's Thanks. We actually had the CEO of Thanks on the show.
Mm-hmm.
He's awesome. But
Exactly. Yeah.
yeah, Zach is great. How do you think about these different programs? To you, are you fully agnostic? It doesn't matter, or what do you think? Like how does that affect you guys when kind of consulting these different franchises?
Yeah, so we work with we are fully agnostic. There are certain platforms that we wouldn't work with just because we don't have the right expertise.
Yeah.
Typically, it's something that is ridiculously complicated. Something like
Yeah.
McDonald's, for example, would be using.
Okay. Okay.
I just don't have the expertise to work with that. Other platforms that we do minimal work on are very entry level platforms. So, for example, if you look at some POS, built-in POS platforms, typically brands that are using them are very very small, and we can
Yeah.
help with a little bit of setup or a little bit of kind of like your just general strategy, but typically we don't routinely execute on those types of platforms. Other
Got
than
it.
that, there is a platform for everyone out there.
It's true.
They're all saying that they all can work with anybody from 2 restaurants to 3,000 restaurants. In reality, there is a sweet spot for each one of those.
Of course, there
Some of
has
the
to be.
clients that come to us, they ask us, "Hey, which one should we go on?" And we'll recommend what we think is appropriate for their size, scale, and resources based on the conversations with them. And
Nice.
then we routinely have clients or prospects coming to us saying, "Hey, we hate whichever platform we're currently on. What should we switch to?" And then my answer is always, "Let's look why you hate it,
Exactly.
because
Before you make the switch.
90% of the time we can fix it, and the other 75% of the time switching platforms is not going to do what you think it's going to do." It's like switching gyms if you're not losing weight.
Yeah,
Usually it's not.
exactly.
Usually it's not quite the gym, but sometimes
Yeah.
the other one is closer. You can make it there. Okay.
Yeah.
Usually it's not the gym itself.
That's a good analogy. I like that, and it's good because it'll save them a lot of time and switching costs. So like, let's understand why before we move on. I
Yeah.
love that. Love that. And so for restaurants listening and they're looking to improve their loyalty program. So obviously we're going to plug, your website, all that stuff at the end of the episode. I like to do a bunch of plugs, but just in general, what are some key metrics they should focus on to kind of drive, long-term growth?
Yeah, so the most important one is loyalty participation rate. So, what percentage of
Yeah.
your transactions goes through the loyalty program? And
Okay.
it depends on the type of restaurant, the type that you're dealing with, and how you're acquiring, identifying those guests. But generally, if you're below 15%, that's not very good. If you're above 15%, it's probably not bad. If you're pushing into 25 plus, it's wonderful.
Yeah.
Again, with the caveat that it depends on identification method and the restaurant type, but kind of
Got it.
in general, right?
Yes.
So for most common programs. So the other one that we really like paying attention to, we call it the spend lift, or it's a
Okay.
difference between how much loyalty guests are spending compared to non-loyalty guests. So
Okay.
you want your loyalty guests to spend more money than somebody off the street. It's
Ideally,
usually
yeah.
it's usually like that. Sometimes it's not. So it's also a fairly common problem that clients come to us with. Why is it that our loyalty guests are actually not spending as much as people off the street? So we work with that and help them fix it, because all of this is
Interesting.
fixable, typically fixable. Yeah, so I would say, like, if there's nothing else to look to that you care about, I would look at those. I would
Those
look
two.
at those two metrics as the most important ones.
Okay, that makes sense. And I gotta just pick your brain on this one because now I'm just personally curious. What's maybe a common reason that someone on off the street, excuse me, might spend more than a loyalty member?
Well, so one of the very common scenario is that you would see that loyalty guests are very value driven for a specific brand, and sometimes brand just reinforces that for those guests. So
discount.
sometimes you just the brand ends up training people to expect a discount, and they wouldn't come in without a discount. So that happens every now and then.
I
Sometimes
see.
you will have people that come in routinely, and they sign up for loyalty program, and people that visit the brand every day for lunch are not going to spend as much as somebody who comes into the same brand once a quarter for dinner. So
Got it.
if your program is unbalanced in terms of you're only driving super frequent people into the program, you're probably going to see lower spend among those guests. And sometimes it's not the end of the world. If they have super high frequency and you're driving their frequency even higher, maybe it's okay.
Yeah.
As long as you're getting incremental visits out of them and the
Right.
visits are profitable. So, but
Right.
overall, yeah, like just like seeing that your loyalty guests on average are spending less on non-loyalty is always a little scary. So you got to get to the bottom of that and figure out, is it okay? Can you reverse it? Should you reverse it?
Got it. That makes sense. And for small and medium restaurants, what's some advice you can give them, or I should say, small and medium chains, advice to give them to compete with the larger, maybe more established brands? I mean, short
I,
answer is to book some time with you, but but
yeah, I think that loyalty programs can help, but loyalty programs are not the center of the restaurant activity. What we
there,
do is incremental. So it can help you shift your sales by a couple percent here and there, but it's not going
yeah,
to change the trajectory of your business altogether. It is helpful, but it's not some kind of miracle. So I think if the goal is to win against the giants, that the heart of that win is in the restaurant operations and food quality,
all right,
and just you can't win just on loyalty and CRM marketing. It helps,
right.
certainly helps if you have something good at the core, but it's not going to be. So I would trying to win, put more effort into ops, and then do what you must with
Good
loyalty.
advice. Yeah,
It's not it's not the center of the universe. It's a useful
yeah.
tool.
Yeah, that's good advice. I love it. Super, super pragmatic. And then I guess what would you say is maybe strategies that you have found most effective to like turn customer data into like actionable insights, right? Because I know restaurants get bombarded, especially these days, with we'll give you data from people like us on inventory,
Yep.
payroll, staffing, every area, and now loyalty. So, what are some strategies you found to be effective from your point of view?
So when we work usually with larger restaurants, and
Yeah,
that's less of an issue with little ones or medium ones, more with the larger restaurants that actually have the ability to absorb ridiculous quantities of assorted data.
yeah,
And then they have to clean the data, house the data, figure out how to access it, real time, not real time, so like all of that, all of that drama. So what we like to do is we like to work on specific use cases.
okay,
So we go back to the what do you actually need the data for?
okay,
So how are you going to utilize it? And what we find is the most useful data is the data around product propensity, meaning what do you like to eat, which is typically based on what you've eaten before.
yeah, okay,
You could also ask questions about what do you like, but typically whatever they ordered is probably what they like to eat.
got it.
That's the easiest way to get there. And then the second part that is particularly helpful is the RFM, frequency and monetary. So how
Okay,
recent were they when they showed up? How frequently do they typically show up? And monetary, how much do they typically spend? What's the range?
got
What's
it.
the average? So to me, that data is really not the only data, but the most important data to work with. Because the example I always give is like if you find out that I'm a 40 something female that loves scuba diving, and you are a 40 something male that loves skiing, and we're both customers at a sandwich restaurant, who the hell cares? So, you're not going to like as a restaurant marketer, I'm not going to send me anything that shows underwater photography or send you something showing the mountains. We're just not going to do
Right,
that. You're still going to get
right.
a picture of a sandwich. So it better be a turkey for me and a beef brisket for you, or whatever it happens to be.
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
at the end of the
That's
day, our
funny.
marketing is going to be tied to, or at least database marketing is going to be tied to our product preferences
Right.
and our spending patterns.
No, it makes sense. I think it goes back to what you said at the beginning about, like, some people they over segment these small, they over segment, which in the end then is just a useless list, because it's you're trying to optimize something that won't really have a big impact.
Yeah, and there are examples when things like this are relevant, right? Like if you're a sports bar and you want to find out which people are fans of baseball and which people are fans of football, that is probably wonderful information to
Makes
have.
sense, yeah.
But then you have to turn it into targeted marketing. So when baseball game is on, you email baseball people. When football game is on, you email football people. But you don't send everything to everybody, because then who cares?
Exactly. It's true. No, it's true. And looking ahead, what are some trends that you either see happening or can see happening when it comes to the future of, restaurant loyalty?
The trends that I'm seeing, well, there's a lot of AI everywhere. So AI, and what I think we're going to see is a lot of people, ourselves included, trying to figure out in the next couple of years how do we practically deploy AI to achieve better quality segmentation, because right now we are doing decent segmentation. It can get better, but it's just too difficult to do manually. So that's definitely going to be a trend, and I'm very excited about the improvements in generative AI in particular, because one of the big challenges for us in segmentation, micro-segmentation, is coming up with the correct creative and quantity. Because you have to have different creative assets to target every single, well, maybe not every single, but micro targets. So you do segmentation, you've got 50, 60, 100 campaigns per week. Each one of them has to have a different creative.
Oh, God.
So, because otherwise it's not segmentation, just send one to everybody, right?
Exactly.
So I think that we will see more higher quality segmentation there with the help of generative AI. Also, I'm hopeful for seeing more of a trend around analytics.
Okay.
Historically, our clients are more interested in doing things and less interested in seeing how those things performed. And partly because analytics is, it's expensive. It takes time to process, and even if you use like other tools to help you, it still takes a bunch of brain power from somebody to understand what happened. So I'm hoping that we're going to see more, not just test, but also learn. So more people closing that cycle and getting their marketing better. Thanks to that.
I love that. And Olga, to wrap up, I always like to give a chance for people to just obviously plug away. So anything you want to share from website, your socials, newsletter, anything you have. So this is an opportunity for you to share. So I'll just give you the floor.
Yeah, so we are at restaurantloyaltyspecialists.com. So my email is olga@restaurantloyaltyspecialists.com. We are not on Twitter. We're not on Facebook. We're only on LinkedIn. We're pretty easy to find. So we have a newsletter, which is a quarterly newsletter. So if you'd like to sign up and get some updates on what's happening in the restaurant loyalties, please shoot me a note and we'll sign you up. And I'm just always open to conversations with people in the restaurant space. If you have thoughts, ideas, or questions around loyalty, whether you're with a small brand or a large brand, doesn't matter. I'm always game for a quick chat.
I love that. Well, Olga, thanks for joining us once again. To all our listeners, Olga Lopategui. I think I mispronounced that, but I'll just say
no,
Olga.
You got it. This time you got it right. Yeah.
I got it right. Amazing. Yeah, ending off on a good note. So we had, once again, everyone, thanks for joining us. We had Olga, from the founder of Restaurant Loyalty Specialists, and you can check them out at restaurantloyaltyspecialists.com. Thanks again for joining us, Olga.
Thank you.
If you want to learn more about Whisk, head to whisk.ai and book a demo.